Redditors who left companies, that non-stop talk about their amazing culture. What was the cringe moment that made you realize you had to get out? They changed the title of the receptionist to Director of First Impressions. Edit, for everyone asking, it's a tiny company in the Midwest. At Big W here in Australia, think Walmart, but no guns. They changed the door greeter title to Customer Champion. Stupidest effing thing I'd ever heard, and all the managers thought it was genius. I'm in management, and we just got the message that bonuses for the last financial year were severely cut across the business, probably going to receive 30% of our total potential, at best. Then attended our financial end-of-year results meeting the next day, to be told that net profits were 18% up, nearly $1 billion total, and the best performance in years, all thanks to us. Okay, planning on leaving now. Edit, cleared up the 30%. OMG, I went through something similar, in 2000. Was working for a financial firm, 1,800 employees, with a sales force of 200. I was one of the salesmen. We had our annual meeting in April. It was a big affair. Most of the employees attended, and the CEO gave a big speech about how the previous year was the best in the company's history, blah blah blah. The next month, May, we each submitted memos, basically justifying why we qualified for, or should qualify for, bonuses at the end of June. I wrote mine out and explained the sales growth in my territory over the course of the previous 12 months, and what percentage my sales were out of last year's total sales. Coming off the company's best year ever, it should have been a slam dunk, right? All of us were excited about how much we'd have coming in June. June rolls around and my bonus is zero. Zero. But it's not just me. It's all over the sales floor. Less than 20% of the sales force got bonuses, and holy shit, everyone was pissed. All the supervisors were dealing with angry subordinates, the sales manager was too, and even the VP and director above him. Everyone was furious and insubordinate, angry accusatory emails were flying, and the company was facing a mutiny. It got worse when it came out that the supervisors were offered bonuses that they could determine for themselves. Most of them took them, but a couple, knowing their subordinates wouldn't be getting anything, refused. My supervisor took his. When it came out, he tried to explain to his sales team about how he felt it was justified and how hard he worked. He ended up with people screaming at him about how they felt the same, but they didn't get jack shit. So, for a week or so, things on the floor came to a stop. A lot of people just didn't show up, and the ones that did were angry. I came in and started reading Monster.com ads at my desk. I also stopped selling anything, or answering my phone. When confronted by my boss, I told him that as soon as I got the bonus my sales justified, I'd start working again. Until then I'd be coming in late, reading and responding to WAN ads, and leaving early. He could expect me to keep that up until I found another job, or was fired. The following day, I was sent to the regional sales manager's office. She said she'd heard about my work stoppage and asked me to explain myself. I told her that if she heard about it from my supervisor, then she already knew why I wasn't working, and I didn't need to explain it again. She tried buddying up to me, being friendly, then being stern, then being angry. I kept my composure and told her that the longer the company held out on my bonus, the longer it was going to miss out on sales from my territory. I then gave her my average daily amount of sales from the previous year, quantified what the total loss would be for a week of me not selling, and how much cheaper it would be just to pay me the money I was owed and get me back to selling. Then I thanked her for her time, and told her I'd be leaving work as soon as I left her office. And I did. The following day I came in, checked my emails, some of which were farewell emails from co-workers who quit over their stolen bonuses, and sat on Monster.com until I was told to go to the office of the national sales manager. He's the gatekeeper, he's in charge of all 200 of us. He told me he understood that I was upset, and could see why. I asked him if withholding the bonuses from 80% of his sales force was his idea, or someone else's. He didn't answer. He did tell me that I would be getting a check on Monday, and could I please go back to work now? I told him I'd be going back to my desk, but work wouldn't start until the check was in my hand. When I went back and checked my emails, yup, more defections. The next day, an email went out to the entire sales force. Management had taken a look at the numbers, re-evaluated the financials, and determined that June bonuses would be issued shortly. The email also apologized for the delay, and reminded us that as salesmen, we were the core of the company and our hard work was appreciated. I also received another email, this time from the national sales manager, who told me, while bonuses were scheduled for Monday, he'd be walking my check to my desk the following day. The following day I showed up, sat down, and shortly afterwards, the national sales manager walked on up and handed me my bonus check. I thanked him, and handed him my resignation effective immediately. In my resignation letter, I requested that a check for my unused vacation time please be cut and given to me before I left the building. When he finished reading it, I told him I'd clean out my desk while I waited for the vacation check. While I was doing that, one of my co-workers also resigned effective immediately. We were walked out at the same time, and ended up getting drunk at the bar across the street. I learned later, from co-workers that remained, that even though the company issued the bonuses, they lost about 20% of the sales force in the following 2 months. Gotta love corporate greed. Bought out by an equity group. New president on call with thousands of employees says, "We have two kinds of employees, those that work a tremendous number of hours, and those that should find another company to work for. We have two types of employees, former employees, and morons. Well, it's easier to pay morons than intelligent workers." True history, I was a software developer, making 20% over minimum wage, in a high-stress environment. Got another job, and was invited to an exit interview with the company owner. "Why are you leaving?" "Honestly, the pay is way too low." "Are you sure the pay is low?" "The gas station across the street pays the attendants 1.5 times more than you guys are paying me, and I got an offer for 3 times my salary. This is why not only I, but anyone remotely good, leaves. It is our company policy to pay low wages." The code base shows. Goodbye. We had a problem with the client, and the boss dumped all of the blame on a 24-year-old woman, who was basically his most loyal employee. He made her cry in front of the client, as if that would somehow help save the relationship. How to turn a dedicated hard worker into a why bother worker 101, right there. Basically what happened with me, LOL. Same here. My degree involves a 3-year apprenticeship. I signed up with one of the biggest companies in business. I worked really hard. I was getting more work done than a qualified professional, making 10x more than me. Except my boss thought it was a good idea to make me sit after hours for absolutely bullshit work, or hand me work at 6 p.m. There was an incident where I was doing something for the first time, and I followed whatever the firm guidance was. I forwarded it to my manager for checking any errors before sending it to client. Boss was chatting with a friend or whatever, and just told me to send it. Except when he reviewed it, he wanted some extra shit to be done, which I absolutely was never told about, and just went ballistic. I think that was kind of the tipping point. I went into severe depression after that incident, and after a few months decided that F this shit, I'm not doing anything more than the bare minimum. The last year of my internship, I barely got anything done. Edit, for those curious, the degree is the equivalent of CPA in my country. Not my company, but a company from a neighboring building. They had an entire area devoted to foosball, pinball, billiards, console gaming, and video booths on the ground floor, and it was clearly visible because of the glass windows on street level. Oddly enough, nobody ever used them, and the place was almost always empty, save for a few people who used the internet kiosks. When I learned a friend worked there, I asked why nobody would want to take the opportunity to use the awesome-looking recreational facility. He told me that people who use the facility often found it used against them during performance evaluations, even when their use wasn't excessive at all. After a while, word got around, and they started avoiding the place altogether. The irony is that their recruitment ads always touts a culture of work hard, play hard. A co-worker was forced to work while her mother was dying in hospice. Mom dies, she quits, they escort her off the premises like a criminal. One of my team leads called me while my dad was in hospice to ask me to start a new project, and I told her to F off, and she could talk to my boss. She did. My boss told her, in a nice way, to F off. When I went to firm drinks, in a public bar, and the firm's fund committee handed out song sheets, and a choir of employees led by a bad guitarist sang a song about how great the firm was, to the tune of "'Cause I'm Happy." We were expected to sing along. It was at that moment I realized I was in a cult. This is what the woman who interviewed me said. "Here at Cheapskate Architects, we don't often do all-nighters for our customers, but when we do, it's a real pizza party. Also, we don't pay overtime, we do it for the love. and your wage is $22K, even though you're an architect. And also I won't be there, because I'm HR management, because I'm married to the director. Yes, we need an HR department, even though there's 3 employees. Treat every dollar like it was your own. Yeah. Right after we went well over targets for the entire year, and then was told a Christmas party wasn't financially viable because expenses. It's one of the biggest hospitality groups in Australia, by the way. When I took a 40% pay cut with no change in workload by being moved to salary. 40%? What? No more overtime. That's something I can't fault my employer for. I used to be on call 24/7 and got paid nicely for it. My company acquired another company, and their support team took on our product out of ours, so my employer gave me an ad hoc pay rise to cover what I'd lose due to not being on call anymore. We treat our employees like family. Ignores harassment claims, hires from outside the company, refuses to give out decent pay, will write you up for doing overtime, but the CEO just bought himself a new BMW. I hate that place. We treat our employees like family. We expect you to always be on call for us, always ready to help us out, and always forgiving our mistakes. In return, you may consider yourself a part of our family. My last job was at an independent school in the UK, the wealthy type. During a period of streamlining, the entire faculty were called into a hall and told, in upbeat terms, that we were struggling to make ends meet. Salaries were too high, perks were too abundant, and spending was unsustainable. For clarity, salaries weren't too high, and perks were practically non-existent. Spending was definitely unsustainable, however, in part, because they were spending hundreds of thousands, redesigning the senior staff offices, to hide all the cabling, and install proper wood paneling. So, then they started listing off perks and assigning them a value. For example, free parking. Well, no shit, the school has a lot of land, and isn't in a city. Why would you charge? Secondly, nice surroundings. Well again, no shit, that's part of your marketing appeal. Long holidays? Nice try, but I work all holiday. They didn't even get as far as telling me what they plan to do with my job and pay. I was gone in less than 3 months. How do you even spend hundreds of thousands on some cable management? How? Oh ho, this is the good bit. The cable management itself wasn't the problem. The problem was that, in order to hide it, they skinned and plastered all of the walls to hide the trunking, thus shrinking the rooms by a few inches. I shit you not. Multiply this by a dozen offices or so, new carpets, because the room is smaller, so why not change the effing carpet at the same time? Custom cut paneling and whatever the hell else they fancied splashing out on. All as a branding initiative, so parents, during their one-on-one meetings, wouldn't feel so aggrieved at the newly increased cost of sending their child to our school. In other news, independent schools are toxic work environments. Lush. When we couldn't say bathroom on the shop floor, and instead had to ask a manager for serenity. I think I would just go around yelling, "Serenity now." The prospect of having to ask a manager to use the bathroom is appalling, no matter what you had to call it. "Hey Bob, can I step out quick? I have to pinch off a huge loaf," in serenity. We, management team, spent months working with a business coach, trying to collectively come up with meaningful core values. We devoted a ton of time to it, and really tried to decide which direction we wanted to take the company culture. Everybody agreed on teamwork, reliability, a couple others that I can't remember now, and then one day, the owner came in and called a meeting. He sat us down in the boardroom and told us he spent all weekend brainstorming and had decided on the core values. They were meaningful, ownership, neighborhood, engagement, you. Does anybody see what that spells? He literally wanted it to be money, and just came up with words that sort of worked the way you do in elementary school, writing your name poem. He rebranded the entire company, from t-shirts with giant first letters and smaller letters for the rest of the word, straight down the arms, to plagues, wraps on the cars, every effing thing. And that's when we all knew it was going to get bad. Money is great, but it was mortifying walking or driving around with that plastered everywhere. Had a wall of crazy, where the CEO wanted to spend $20K on cool and edgy stuff for the office, and staff could make suggestions, slides, beanbags, napping pods, etc. Project was scrapped when the top suggestions ended up being desks, chairs, working heating, working Wi-Fi, health insurance. Edit, not American or Swedish. Health insurance on the wall of crazy. Sounds about right, lol. Not me, but my husband worked for 2 weeks for a family-owned and operated business that touted how important family was, and that they were all one happy family. My husband was on his way to drop our, at the time 2-year-old son, off at daycare, before work, when son threw up all over himself. Husband called his employer to tell them what happened, and that he needed to take son home and clean him up, but he'd be in ASAP. His manager told him he needed to get his priorities straight. He responded with, "You know what? You're right, I won't be back in at all." He was still working part-time at his previous job, where they had been sad that he was leaving, so he called them and told them to put him back on the schedule, full-time. The family business is currently in the process of liquidating assets before going out of business, and I cackle every time I drive past it. When I started actually working on the floor, and management was nowhere to be found. Welcome to call centers. I work in the complaints department, and we don't have a lot of managers. I had a belligerent customer demand a manager for an issue. I was told management are all busy, but to tell him one would give him a call back at 4. All day I asked who was calling him back at 4, and told it would be sorted. 3:55 I am told I have to call him. He wasn't pleased. I worked at this business that was real keen on telling everyone they were like a family, and chastising me for not going to company parties, etc. But that also refused to pay overtime, and expected me to work late, 2 or 3 times a week, as well as doing a 14-hour a day, twice a month, for stock take, or end of month. Apparently because we're a family, we were all expected to chip in on the big days, except it was literally just us bottom-tier workers who had to stay late. I quit that place and never looked back. "We're a family here" is a huge red flag for me after similar experiences. Expectations of family burdens are always placed on the employees, and family-style benefits are only enjoyed by higher-ups. There's also at least one person who really needs to be let go, but won't be, because they're like family. I worked at B&Q and one of my colleagues was stabbed 30 times by a customer. I was completely shaken. The next morning, we were taken into a big room and made to sign a document saying we wouldn't sue them. If we didn't sign, we'd lose our jobs. Also, my colleague was stabbed only a month after they got rid of our security guard to save money. Edit, since so many people have asked, he did survive. He lost an eye and now limbs, but he's alive at least. Edit 2, B&Q is essentially British Home Depot. My district manager told me to talk my key holder out of going back to college. Mind you, she wanted to be a doctor. They were proud that no one had degrees. That's fine, but I'm not working 45+ hours a week and mandatory holidays just to sell some shoes. The loyalty my coworkers had were so cringy. They didn't understand how we were being taken advantage of because we didn't get our degrees. Anyways, F you, going back to school was the best decision I've made. Bruh, I think I just went through the same bullshit when I told my boss I was going to school. Dude hit me with the, "I feel like you're taking the easy route, and don't you think you should have said something sooner?" As if staying at Unsaid Shoe Company for 12 years and submitting to bullshit 52-hour weeks because you want hire another AM is supposed to be worth it for me. As if I need to give you more than a 2 weeks notice, or that it would even be a wise decision for me to do so. I got really bitter after that conversation. This happened a couple of weeks ago, when HR sent out an email to management, excluding me, and about 2 other people, telling them to fraudulently leave good reviews on Glassdoor, and to coerce others to do the same. Edit, I'm not exactly on a throwaway, so I'm going to refrain from mentioning the company at this time. However, it looks like this is a common issue, and there needs to be a better way to call this out. When I was asked to sleep with a potential client. Edit, the rest of the story. At the time, I was in my early 20s. I'm female. Looking back, I realize I had more going on looks-wise than I knew back then. This was decades ago. My boss, business owner, always told us that he thought of the office as one big family. He also referred to the female employees as his girls. A new client is coming into the office. My boss called me into his office and told me he was going to give me the company credit card so I could take the potential new client out for dinner and drinks. He told me to sleep with him. We need this client if everyone wants to get paid. Nice added pressure. I said no, and the next day quit. A couple of months earlier my boss had invited me over to his house for dinner with his family and to swim in his pool because he said he knew how hard I had been working. I was a little surprised that he finally noticed, and thought it was kind that he wanted to do something nice for me. I get there, and his wife and kids are gone. But there is a 25-year-old guy in his pool. The son of a client, who just got out of the army. He told me he was trying to fix me up on a date because I needed to get out more. Like an idiot, I believed him. It wasn't until later that I realized that he was hoping I'd show more interest in the guy. I found out later that he had asked all the female employees at one point to sleep with clients. The secretary actually did. She was a young, single mom and was worried she'd be fired if she said no. After I quit, she told me she wished she had the option to quit. I didn't realize what she was saying until we talked later. At the time, his daughter was around 4 years old. When I quit, I asked him, how old would his daughter have to be before he asked her to sleep with clients? I thought he was going to hit me. I have 1,000 stories about working at this place. The guy was an unethical idiot. A dangerous combination. But I learned a lot about how to not run a business from him. I've owned my own business for 30 years now. I've never asked an employee to sleep with clients, or even go out for drinks. I had the benefit of growing up in a family with money. I wasn't earning much, and would probably not have been able to quit and move without the assistance of my parents. I never told them what happened. When I told my dad I quit, he was happy. You hated the place. Now that I'm older and times have changed, I would know what to do. I would hope he'd face consequences. Today this isn't considered a regular part of business. #MeToo wasn't a thing back then. No one really cared. This was the only time I was directly asked to sleep with a client, but not the only time I faced sexual harassment at work. It was so common for me and my friends that when we pushed back against it, we felt like we were really on the leading edge of changing work environments for women. I guess we were. But sad that we needed to be. I certainly hoped women didn't face this anymore, but the recent news set me straight on that. When our university's VP explained that the goal of every tenured faculty member was to write enough grants to pay our salaries and replace us with TAs every semester, ideally every undergrad class. Also, we'd be under a hiring freeze, but could feel free to be creative and use temporary grant money to hire tenured faculty. Also, we'd all be paying an extra $250 per year in parking fees to fund a new student parking lot. Dear Lord, was I glad I'd already decided to leave. ETA, I cannot identify the state university system in question. The comments suggest that it's not alone in its approach. If you're looking for a good college to attend, ask plenty of questions. For the love of God, ask about accreditation, and do not take, we're finalizing it right now, as an answer, nor, we're accredited by the 3 other colleges we're co-scamming with. If you're more specifically concerned about the problem I describe, ask probing questions about the percentage of classes taught by full-time faculty, and grab copies of the course catalog and campus directory or faculty list to check the reality of offerings. I would also ask about advising. Colleges without advising staff offload that duty onto professors, and that can make it very difficult to get your advisor's attention. I worked at Outback. The amount of team meetings and mandatory enthusiasm was ridiculous. I was given the chance to backpack across Europe with some friends for about 3 weeks one summer. I told my manager, and she goes, 3 weeks? I don't know. You'll really have to work hard up until then, and then I'll let you know if you can take that time off. I straight up told her, it's not if you let me go. It's if you still let me work here when I get back. Yeah, when I got back, I immediately started looking for new jobs. I literally told my manager that I was leaving for 2 months to be in England, and she was fine with it. Remind your manager that you aren't asking for permission to take off, you're telling them ahead of time that you aren't working then, or find a new job. Never skip out on opportunities to travel the world, for a job that would replace you in a second. Edit: this advice was meant for people working jobs such, fast food places, delivery jobs, etc. Obviously, if you have a career at your job, make sure you have a safety net to fall back on, if you plan on doing this. Don't be a D. Tell your job way ahead of time, so they have time to adjust to your absence. I am not responsible for any jobs lost while following my advice. Good luck. When attending a management retreat, and was pressured into buying charity raffle tickets I couldn't afford $20. The two people who won before me donated their winnings to the same charity they bought the raffle tickets from. They were middle management, pissing match people who make $100,000 plus. I made $32,000 with a young daughter. I won a drawing for $400. I literally had nausea for 2 days, trying to figure out how I was going to pay my bills, after my job had just moved the goalposts on some sales performance bonuses I had coming my way, dropping it effectively from $1,000 to $200. Now I'm the a-hole who's going to keep the money I won. Guess I'm not a team player. Bonus: this was 4 hours drive from home, had an overnight stay, and one of those middle management FS, in an example of what should be on or off the clock, said, "We shouldn't be paid for the drive to the retreat." F you. I was on the clock from the time I left Friday until I got home Sunday. If you're forcing me to be somewhere as part of my job, it's all on the clock. My district manager didn't like that, and I was already looking for the door.